Hello friends, let us now learn some important points about the Meniere's disease, or also called as endolymphatic hydrops. Here, this Meniere's disease is a disease of membranous inner ear. It is a disease of membranous inner ear with a triad of vertigo, fluctuating deafness, and there is fluctuating tinnitus. So there is vertigo, fluctuating deafness, that is episodic vertigo, fluctuating deafness, and fluctuating tinnitus. This is mostly seen in males followed by females. It is most common in 35 to 60 years of age. It is generally unilateral. So if you see the clinical features, here the patient will have vertigo. This vertigo is actually sudden in onset and episodic in nature. It increases over period of time and lasts for several hours. Slowly, it lasts for several hours. This vertigo is associated with nausea, vomiting, pallor, sweating, diarrhea, and bradycardia. This vertigo, there is no loss of consciousness is seen. Then, if you see the deafness, in fluctuating deafness or fluctuating hearing loss, this is actually a sensory neural type of hearing loss, which is initially there is low frequency hearing loss is seen initially. Later you will see both low and high frequency hearing loss is seen. So initially you see low frequency hearing loss, later you see both low and high frequency hearing loss. Then there is a phenomenon which is common in Meniere's disease, which is diplocusis. What is diplocusis? Here the patient hears sound louder than normal. Here the patient hears the sound louder than normal. This is because of the recruitment phenomenon, where there is intolerance to the loud sounds is seen in Meniere's disease. Then, if you see the pathology, in pathology, the endolymph moves from the cochlea to the endolymphatic sac. Endolymph will move from the cochlea to endolymphatic sac. In the endolymphatic sac, it is actually absorbed. Now, any disturbance in the production or in the absorption of the endolymph will result in accumulation of endolymph. Because of this, the endolymph will accumulate in the cochlea. It will also accumulate in the endolymphatic sac and also the membranous labyrinth. If it accumulates in the cochlea, then it results in hearing loss. If it accumulates in the membranous labyrinth, then it results in vertigo. So this is the main pathogenesis of Meniere's disease. Now what about the other symptoms? The tinnitus, I said about the vertigo, fluctuating deafness. What about the fluctuating tinnitus? The tinnitus is also fluctuating type, and it is actually a roaring type of tinnitus. Fluctuating and roaring type of tinnitus is seen. Then the patient will complain of oral fullness, and there is one more phenomenon which is important in Meniere's disease, which is called as Tullio's phenomenon. So what do you see in Tullio's phenomenon? Here the patient has subjective imbalance, and nystagmus occurs when he is exposed to loud and low frequency sound. If he is exposed to loud and low frequency sound, then there will be subjective imbalance will be there, and nystagmus will develop in the patient. Why does this occur? This mainly occurs due to distended saccule lying against the stapes foot plate. It is due to distended saccule which is lying against the stapes foot plate that is responsible for this thing. Distended saccule lying against the stapes foot plate will result in this Tullio's phenomenon. Then we have drop crisis. We also have drop crisis, or we also call it as otolith crisis. We have drop crisis and otolith crisis. What does this mean? Here there is sudden drop attack occurs in the patient without loss of consciousness. He just feels like dropping, but he doesn't lose consciousness. So that is drop attacks. There is no vertigo, no fluctuation in this patient with drop attacks. These drop attacks or otolith crisis of Tumarkin mainly occur due to the defect in the otolith membrane. Whenever there is defect in the otolith membrane of utricle and saccule due to dilatation, the patient suffers from drop crisis or otolith crisis of Tumarkin. Then the patient will also develop nystagmus. Okay, investigations, if you see in the tuning fork, you will see sensory neural hearing loss. Sensory neural hearing loss, if it is Rennes test, it will be positive. If it is Weber's test, it is deviated to the opposite ear, that is normal ear. And there is Quebec test, the bone conduction, it is Quebec test is for bone conduction, it is actually shortened. Then if you do a speech audiometry, in speech audiometry the discrimination scores will be 55 to 85% is the discrimination score. Then there is one more thing, which is recruitment. Recruitment is also present in a patient with Meniere's disease. You see recruitment. And on brainstem evoked response audiometry, you will see reduced latency of wave 5 will be seen. Reduced latency to wave 5 will be seen. And if you do an electrocochleography, and in electrocochleography, you will see that there will be a summating potential by action potential. It is 1.3 or it is 1.3. Okay, so normally summating potential by action potential should be less than 30%. But here it is 1.3, or if you see in percentages, it becomes 33%. Okay, so this is in Meniere's disease, this will be more than 30 to 40%. Summating potential to action potential ratio in electrocochleography, it will be more than 30 to 40% in Meniere's disease. Then if you do pure tone audiometry, you will see presence of sensory neural hearing loss. This sensory neural hearing loss in the early stages, the curve will be raising type curve will be seen at lower frequencies, whereas in later stages the curve will be flat type, or you will see falling type of curve is seen at higher frequencies. So this flat type of curve is seen in 42%, this downward curve is seen in 19%, this raising curve is seen in 77%. No need to remember the values, but just remember that in early staging the curve is unsloping type or raising type at low frequency. Then we have at in late stages the curve is flat or falling type at high frequency. Okay. Next, we can also do caloric tests. If you do caloric tests for Meniere's disease, they show canal paresis. Then you can also do glycerol test. Actually, glycerol test is used for diagnosis of Meniere's disease, where in glycerol test we give IV parenterally, we give glycerol, and this glycerol will decrease the intralabyrinthine pressure, and this will improve the cochlear blood flow, because it increases the cochlear blood flow and increases the absorption of the endolymph. So as a result, it will result in improvement of hearing loss will occur with the help of glycerol test. Okay, so this glycerol test will increase the discrimination score by 10 points. Okay, then not only glycerol test, we have one more test which is called as reverse glycerol test. This reverse glycerol test, in glycerol test we give glycerol to the patient, but in reverse glycerol test we give acetazolamide to the patient. Even this, if you give acetazolamide to the patient, it will shows deterioration in pure tone thresholds and discrimination potentials. The patient becomes even more severe hearing loss will develop because of acetazolamide. But actually we do not do these tests in routine practice. And then if you see the diagnostic evaluation, mainly you do audiometry and history we will take. Okay, and based on the criteria we will put the patient on. Next we have variants. So if you see the variants, we have variants of Meniere's disease are present. First we have cochlear hydrops. The first type is cochlear hydrops. What is cochlear hydrops? As the name says, here only cochlear symptoms are present. That means the symptoms of membranous labyrinth like vertigo are not present in this patient. Only the cochlear symptoms are present. Here, why is there only cochlear symptoms? Because here the block is at the ductus reunions. Because there is block is in the ductus reunion, so there is increased endolymphatic pressure is confined only to the cochlea. Then we have vestibular hydrops. Same in the vestibular hydrops, as the name says, here the problem is only present in the vestibule. So the symptoms are only of vestibules are present. That means in this the patient will have typical episodes of vertigo, but the cochlear function will be completely normal. So that is vestibular hydrops. Then the next important is we have Lermois syndrome. What is Lermois syndrome? Lermois syndrome is here the symptoms are seen in a reverse order. Normally we see episodic vertigo, deafness and tinnitus. But here in Lermois syndrome, first will be hearing loss followed by vertigo. First and foremost, there will be hearing loss followed by vertigo is seen in Lermois syndrome. So these are the different syndromes which we see. Now, if you see the treatment, first and foremost we do medical therapy followed by surgical therapy. In medical therapy, the initial treatment is with medical management. In this we will have with medical management itself almost two-third of the patients will resolve with medical management. So in this first you will give antihistaminic labyrinthine sedatives are given. These antihistaminic labyrinthine sedatives are also called as vestibular sedatives. These are chlorperazine, promethazine and cinnarizine are given. Then we have second, we can give anxiolytics. Anxiolytics or tranquilizers like diazepam can be given if the patient is anxious. Then we can give vasodilators. These vasodilators will actually increase the vascularity of endolymphatic sac and the duct, and thus they will help in reabsorption of fluid from the endolymphatic sac, so that the endolymph will be decreased, so that the dilated cochlea and the membranous labyrinth will come back to their original size, so the symptoms will resolve. So what are the vasodilators given? Beta histine hydrochloride, nicotinic acid, thymoxamine and inhaled carbagen and histamine drip are the vasodilators which are given in Meniere's disease. Then if you see, next we have diuretics. Diuretics can also be given in this patient. So diuretics like furosemide are given, and other drugs which can be given for Meniere's disease include propanthelin, bromide, propanthelin bromide, phenobarbital and hyoscine are given in medical management of Meniere's disease. Next, then we have one more device which is called as Miniette device. So what is Miniette device? Meniette's disease. This Meniette's disease is, in this Meniette's disease, to the inner ear we give intermittent pressure is given to the inner ear. So if we give intermittent pressure to the inner ear, this will help in drainage or absorption of the endolymph, and as a result it will improve the symptoms of the Meniere's disease and thus improves hearing. Okay, so that is Meniette disease. So this is medical management. Then we can also ask the patient to do laryngeal exercises. So laryngeal exercises like we have Cooksey-Cawthorne exercise can be done for the adaptation of larynx. That is Cooksey-Cawthorne exercise can be done. Anyways, this is not that important. Next we have surgical management. In the surgical management, first we can give intratympanic gentamicin therapy. So what is this intratympanic gentamicin therapy? In this intratympanic gentamicin therapy, which is also called as chemical labyrinthectomy. So here we will insert a grommet into the, actually first of all this is a ear, okay, ear became very small. Okay. So okay, this gentamicin is actually vestibular toxic. So if you give it daily or bi-weekly injected into the middle ear, because it is vestibular toxic, it causes destruction of the labyrinth. That is the reason why we call it as chemical labyrinthectomy. Why? Because we are giving a drug which will almost cause the death or destruction of the labyrinth. So the side effect of this is the patient will have vertigo spells only. Okay, now how are you going to deliver this gentamicin into the tympanic membrane? So for this we have to first insert a grommet or tube should be inserted, and after inserting a grommet tube, you will put the put a microwick is put is microwick. It is a small this gentamicin, this intratympanic gentamicin, it is available as a small microwick which is made up of polyvinyl acetate, and it measures around 1 into 9 millimeters, and that small wick is put in the ear. This will deliver the drug from the external ear to the inner ear by avoiding the intratympanic injections. But first and foremost, we will introduce the grommet. We will first insert the grommet. After grommet, we will put the microwick here. So this will this microwick will now deliver the drug into the round window, and then it is absorbed into the inner ear. Okay, next we have gentamicin. Then next, the second type is we have endoscopic. Second, we have endolymphatic sac decompression. In endolymphatic sac decompression can be done. In endolymphatic sac decompression, the pressure of the sac is relieved in this endolymphatic sac decompression. Here, local anesthesia or under general anesthesia, we do simple mastoidectomy, and after doing simple mastoidectomy, the 3 semicircular canals are lineated. The semicircular canals will be lineated, and then the bone in this area is you will have to expose the sac, and then you will have to decompress the sac and relieve the pressure in the sac, and thus it will relieve the symptoms. Okay, that is endolymphatic sac decompression. Then we also have one more type, which is endolymphatic shunt surgery. What do you do in endolymphatic shunt surgery? Here you will put a tube between the subarachnoid space and the endolymphatic space. Between the subarachnoid space and endolymphatic space, a tube is put, and this tube will help in draining of fluid from the endolymphatic space directly into the subarachnoid space, so that the excess fluid from endolymphatic space will be drained out. Okay, this is endolymphatic shunt. Then we have sacculotomy. What do you do in sacculotomy? In this, you will puncture. The saccule is punctured through a needle. Through the foot plate of stapes, the saccule is punctured through a needle, and you will aspirate the excess of the fluid. This will also help in decompression of the sac. Okay. Then these are the important causes. These are the important treatment modality for Meniere's disease. Thank you.